So the good news is, the later the day, the shorter the testimony.
You know,
How's that?
I do.
So congratulations.
I do. Thank you. And I do want to say this. And Assemblyman Farrell and I have talked about this, and I think we need to change the structure of the hearings next year. My grandfather would say, you're trying to pack 10 pounds of grain in a 5-pound bag when you have 2 hearings on the same day. And I'd like to take a look at changing it. So for you who have sat here all day and been so patient, we are so grateful that you're still here, and we apologize that it's taken this long. I'd like to introduce, here's my list, from the Civil Service Employees Association Local 100, Fran Turner, Director, Legislative and Political Action. Wanted to make sure I got your title correct. So welcome, Fran.
Thank you, Senator. I want to start, I am going to be very short because I did listen to the testimony all day. We have a great interest in the human service delivery agencies, but I do want to address a few things that came up under this hearing. And Senator Krueger, you mentioned the health insurance for retirees and the governor's proposal that retirees would pay more depending on their years of service and their grade. And we contend that that is a mandatory subject of collective bargaining. It should be on the table. It involves active employees right now because it doesn't go into effect until October 2016. Right. And there is no question, based on the number of phone calls that we have fielded in the past week and a half, that there will be a mass exodus of employees who are eligible to retire and who will retire before their health insurance goes up. Senator Funke, you asked about our last contract, which was a 5-year contract with 3 zeros and 2 2s. There was also an increase in health insurance for all of our employees. All of our state workers are paying more for their health insurance under this past contract than they did previously, which means all of those employees, when they go to retire, will pay more for their health insurance in retirement as well. Because right now you pay in retirement what you pay as an active employee. So that did get raised. And one thing, not that I want to belabor this discussion, minimum wage, Assemblyman Saladino, the governor's proposal excludes one group of public sector workers from his minimum wage proposal. That is public sector employees who work in counties, towns, cities, and villages are excluded from an increase in the minimum wage under the governor's proposal. I'm not sure that that wasn't an oversight, but it's just something to keep in mind. School district employees by law are included. Other local government public employees are not included in the governor's proposal. So I want to move on to OPWDD and OMH because CSEA still represents around 33,000 employees in these two human service agencies. And these employees are having a hard time. We included in the back of your testimony the overtime that is being performed by the employees in OPWDD. And in that you'll see that we included a chart that shows pay periods from pay period 9 through 14. The chart includes how many consecutive days they're working in a row, how much is mandatory overtime, where the overtime is and what facilities, and I have to tell you, our members need some relief. I will say that I did listen to the commissioner, the acting commissioner, Carrie Delaney, who we have had a very good working relationship with. She has tried so hard through these boot camps to recruit new employees because for 5 years we've been underfunded, right? For 5 years these agencies have gotten nothing. So it has been a continuous thing for 5 years. So she has tried hard, she's done the boot camps. But if you look at the other attachments to the testimony, you will see that there are 3,100 and something odd employees tied up in civil service because they can't get through employee health services because there are not enough resources in civil service to get them through the process. So there's a chart there on the back showing all the people that were recruited throughout this boot camp process who have not been able to get hired It's taking them 69 days to reach these people. And what happens after 69 days? Many of these people are not available anymore for these jobs. So we keep rolling these boot camps out. We keep getting these people onto a list, but we can't get them through the medical exams and the psychological testing under civil service because the agency has been decimated, as has the rest of the state agencies. You know, we're living underneath this 2% spending cap that I'm not sure where it came from, except that somebody decided it sounded good. And it has hurt the delivery of services all over the state and all of the state agencies. Also, I have to remark on the transformation and the need for housing and community residences in OPWDD. At the same time that we heard parents say, we need placements, they're bringing down 16 IRAs, which are smaller community homes, some of them. They can serve anywhere from 1 to 14 clients. Some of them are 24/7 supports because that's what the clients in that particular home need. Some of them are 3 clients that don't need a lot of supports because they're a little more self-sufficient. So while we have this great need, while we have a waiting list of 11,000, the state is bringing down these beds, and they will say, we don't need them. They will say they're transitioning to the not-for-profits. Well, we have this dual system of state workers and not-for-profits, and we can't treat the developmentally disabled without both sectors. There's no question we can't do it without both. So I don't understand, and perhaps we can go back at them, why we're closing residential housing when we know we need it, when we know there's going to be a greater need in the future. As we go through this transformation project in OPW, the state workforce is also transforming and doing different jobs. What we're trying to do is these care pilots that will help those coming out of the developmental centers become more self-sufficient. We will give them pre-vocational training so that we can better prepare them for a real job. We try to find them, we do this one pilot called Pathways to Employment, trying to find them real jobs in the community, trying to get them to integrate them. We believe in the transformation process and that the developmentally disabled can live more full lives and get a good wage, a minimum wage. However, now we are seeing that we have a waiting list in these care pilots for people coming out of the developmental centers because there's not enough care pilots. There's not enough respite. And we want to see an expansion of this because we don't want to start another waiting list because we have more facilities that are scheduled to close, right? So we don't need to start another waiting list. We already have enough clients to serve. And it's certainly apparent that government's not providing its moral obligation or its responsibility to the people in our state that need it the most. And I listened to the commissioner of OMH talk about this new paradigm where we're treating those with mental illness in our county jails and prisons. And more of it, you hear the county sheriffs going to their county legislative bodies asking for more money for mental health services. And in fact, if they're in a county facility, it's usually a misdemeanor charge. If it's a non-violent misdemeanor charge, why are they there in the first place? Why aren't we doing intervention before that? And why are we bringing down 400 beds when we could be using them to treat this population in a therapeutic atmosphere instead of in a prison? So I question bringing down these 400 beds. I question the fact that they're empty. If they're empty, it's because we're not letting anybody in to get treatment. Some places we know there's empty beds because there's not enough staff to staff the bed if we put a client in the bed. So there's no question that in the human services, and I listen to the not-for-profits, and they are so right, we can't serve all these clients, so we're going to bring down more services, and it just makes no sense. One of the other things that I do want to talk about, and that's economic development, I believe Assemblyman Bronson brought it up. I believe in economic development. I think it's good to try to bring businesses and to try to repair our infrastructure and our roads and our bridges. But at what expense are we going to leave these vulnerable people who need our help the most? At what expense are we not going to provide for them? And while Commissioner Delaney did say that there was $175 million in new money, I look at the budget and I see $66 million for advertising for Startup New York. And I shake my head and think, what's more important? Advertising for a program that if it was so good, why aren't people rushing to it, or taking care of the people that need our help? Some of these other regional economic development grants, if you look more closely at some of the proposals, private businesses are getting money to add spas to their hotels or their inns. I mean, they're getting private money to build residential housing and apartments in very wealthy areas of the state of New York. So I think there could be so much more that we could serve those that need help if we took a look at and did economic development that made sense instead of giving our hard-earned taxpayer dollars away to businesses that don't need it. So I would just say that, you know, we are going to be judged on how we take care of the people that help us the most. And this budget really fails to take care of the most vulnerable. So we hope that you will work with us to try to change a lot of this, to try to get resources directed to where they can do a lot of good for our communities and for the people that need the help the most.
Thank you very much. And I have to apologize. I think I said local 100 and I meant local 1000.
That's quite all right.
So I want to correct the record to make sure that I did
No,
that.
that's fine.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. Senator Martins.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. It is always a pleasure to see you, and I appreciated your comments. One of the themes that comes up from time to time, and it's come up a couple of times today, is our preparedness as a state to address the issues before us. And the fact that the trend over the last few years has been to contract out so much of the work that had traditionally been done by our own state workforce. And I was wondering if you could give us your thoughts on that, because as we address issues and concerns going forward, as we deal with traditional issues that have been handled by the workforce in this state and have now been contracted out, I have concerns that that institutional knowledge that has existed in this state and that has been such a critical part of providing services to those, specifically those who are most at risk, are being jeopardized for the bottom line, and that we then don't have the benefit of those resources and that institutional knowledge as we go forward, because our workforce in New York State, as has already been mentioned a number of times, is aging. And so we have a responsibility to evaluate that, evaluate the workforce, evaluate those portions of the workforce that are being contracted out, and to the extent that there are issues out there, correct them so that we can set this ship on its proper course.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, Senator, and I think while it hasn't been specifically stated this way, I think you will see that in our human service agencies, where you have a very dedicated, educated, trained workforce, that more and more of our work with the developmentally disabled and the mentally ill is going to the not-for-profits. And I think it is the intent of those agencies to become strictly regulatory agencies versus agencies that actually have their own workers. And it is a problem, as we heard today, about retention. It is a problem as far as training. We're going to lose all this educated state workforce. So I think as they attrit the system, I mean, even now, if I look at the numbers of the agencies, we're going to go down in OPWDD by 255 positions, even though that overtime is ridiculous, right? And even though with the closures that we've been going through, we're not losing staff because the overtime is so high, they're just reassigning them. But sooner or later, I believe that they want to become a regulatory agency. They won't have state workers doing this. It'll all be not-for-profit providers. I think you lose a lot of, we do a lot more education because we can, I guess. There's a lot longer training period before people move to that first step, and I think you're going to lose all that. And I think you're going to lose some accountability, and you're going to lose some control. And, you know, it's always been it's always been that the state workforce would take the harder to serve client, the ones that needed more direct 24/7 care. Now that client's being moved out to the not-for-profit sector, and I think you heard some of them say today that it's not appropriate placements for all of them. They can't afford to take the clients that need that intensive care. So I think they're going to be forced to take them because I do believe that outsourcing is the way these agencies are going. And it's not just OPW and it's not just MH. I mean, it's a lot of the other agencies as well. You know, we've seen a ton of state temp workers in all of our state agencies. And they're not temp workers that come through the Kelly services like the issue we had 3 years ago. They are temporary workers working in our state agencies. A lot of them are in OPWDD, and here's what happens. If I'm a temp worker, we've had temp workers for 5 years, the same temp worker in OPWDD homes for years. But they don't want to become a full-time worker because they don't want scheduled work. They want to be able to determine, I don't want to work on a weekend, right? I don't want to work on a Friday. So subsequently, our members will get mandated because they can't fill those gaps. We have temp workers in, I bet you, every single state agency in the state. You're welcome.
Thank you. Assembly?
Assemblyman Bronson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did I hear you say in your testimony that in OPWDD there's been a reduction in the workforce of 200 or 250?
That's what they're expecting this year. They're expecting a reduction in the state workforce of 255 positions.
So, you know, looking at your statement regarding a moral obligation to take care of the least among us, and certainly individuals with development disabilities, they need our help. They need our support. And, you know, it would be interesting to me to see if there has been an increase in the economic development areas of workers and an increase in that area where we're trying to assist the private sector compared to what we've done not only in OPW but in other agencies where the state has an obligation to take care of folks in great need. Do you have, turning a little bit to what you were saying about a paradigm shift of instead of taking care of folks through the Office of Mental Health and the various facilities we have in that area, and folks actually getting, I'm not going to say the care because they're not getting the care, but they're getting services, if you will, through county jails. They're in the county court systems. At the same time, we're reducing beds. Do you have a dollar amount, or has anybody generated a dollar amount of the increase that is costing our localities to run the justice system, because now they're having an influx of folks who really should be receiving treatment instead of being penalized for their illnesses?
I don't have that. I know what we do have. We did collect data a couple years ago from a lot of the county sheriffs as to how much it was costing them to provide the mental health treatment in the county jails, and I'll see if I can look that up and find it for you. I don't have any other information to see how much it's costing the courts to go through the process, but you know, there are some mental health courts, I believe, in some concentrated areas of the state. Obviously not enough, and I don't think we're using them correctly because we need to divert the clients away from the county jails and into some crisis centers. And you know, if they're not going to the county jails, a lot of the mentally ill, when they have a crisis, they're going to our ERs. They're going to the emergency rooms, which we all know are so expensive, right? And they're staying there for a few days, or they're staying in the hospital for a few days, and then they're getting released and they're not getting services. So it's a cycle that keeps happening because they keep going into crisis, because If you don't have somebody following you, helping you access other services, whether they're available is another story, you're going to end up back there again.
And the reality is there's cost drivers there. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's a lot of argument that, we don't want to be spending taxpayer dollars on some of the public facilities, but we're forcing localities and others to pay additional cost dollars in connection with those services. We're forcing hospitals to pay additional money. There's Medicaid dollars that get involved. I mean, we're trying to save, the state is trying to save some money on one end, and it's increasing costs on the other, and I think probably to a higher cost level. Could you speak a little bit more, and I was intrigued by your comment about that neither the public sector nor the private sector can provide all of the needs that we have for the folks that you serve, and that you're interested in working in partnership with the private sector. During the transformation, both in the mental health and the developmental disability arenas, how has that partnership changed, and are there areas where we can improve that partnership and maybe delineate what the public sector can do and what the private sector can do?
So you're talking about the relationship with the not-for-profits and the state workforce?
Yes.
Actually, we have a good relationship because we always had this dual system, right? I think it's getting harder for the not-for-profits because I think they're taking clients that are much more involved, that the state workforce always took care of, and it's costing them a lot more for these individual clients, and they're not getting the reimbursement for it. We've always had a good dual system. It's being dismantled is basically the bottom line because the state doesn't want to put the resources in. And no question that they don't pay the not-for-profits as much, the workers don't get paid as much as the state workers. I should tell you that our starting salary in OPWDD is just about $15.50. Okay, so I mean, it's cheaper, okay? The state is looking at it from a purely financial point of view. It's cheaper to give these clients to the not-for-profits than it is to keep the state workforce working, right? It may not be the best for the client. They may not get the intensive services because there's just not enough workers in the not-for-profit sector, and the turnover is very, very big. You know, we went around the state and we listened to the transformation hearings and the parents. One parent talked about his son being in a not-for-profit residential facility. They were very happy with the facility, but in 5 years, he had 100 different staff. Because and that's not good for the developmentally disabled. Okay, they need consistency. And I think with the not-for-profits can't provide that consistency at this point in time, right? Because they can't pay the wages of the state workforce. And I do believe that there are some clients that are so difficult to serve that they will have to stay in a more secure environment and an environment with more intensive help. But I wouldn't say, Assemblyman, that our relationship with the not-for-profits is not good because we work side by side in this industry for years. We always have.
Well, I think that's a very good point, that the relationship is good and that both sectors are trying to provide the best service they can for the folks that they serve. And this push for privatization doesn't have that objective in mind. It has a financial, a fiscal objective, and what we need is an objective, and as you said, our moral obligation to take care of the folks who are in need of those services. So we need to focus on that more than the fiscal piece of it.
Well, it was quite telling in the governor's presentation. We're going to spend $100 billion, over 5 years for infrastructure. And I would say that this is part of our infrastructure, the state of New York, isn't it? Taking care of these people should be part of the infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Senator Funke.
It does seem like we're backwards sometimes in the state of New York. And it also seems like, in terms of getting money out the door to those who need it, to getting projects completed, it seems like we run in sand in this state a lot of the time. So my question to you is, when on your chart in the back here, 68 days in Western New York, average days for clearance. When you ask the question why, what's the answer that you get?
We don't have the staff to get them through employee health services. We don't have the resources to get them through employee health services. Many of the state workers have to be psychologically tested for OPWDD and MH. That's not the case with the not-for-profit workers. And we've been arguing with the commissioner and others that why don't we, if you're taking the client, it was years ago that because of the client that we served, right, it was more involved, they needed more care, so they decided we needed psychological testing. They are now giving these clients to the not-for-profits, but they're not requiring psychological testing, but we still have to get through it. We can't get through it. There aren't enough resources for us to get through this testing, and that's why it's taking so long to hire.
Thanks.
Thank you. Someone?
Yes, Assemblyman Saladino.
Thank you. Friend, we really appreciate you being here, your testimony, and your tireless advocacy for our government employees. It's such an important aspect of bringing out these issues. So I just want to get on the record with two very brief issues. One is, it underscores exactly what you've been talking about. Just this week here in Albany, I had a meeting with the Suffolk County Police representatives. And they made the point that they have seen spikes in problems, in calls, in issues since the closing or the scaling back of facilities that provide assistance to those with behavioral health issues and substance abuse issues. So that's where the rubber meets the road, and it really proves your point, because if there wasn't additional problems, they wouldn't get those calls.
Right.
Also, I wanted to point out issues that we were speaking about earlier, including issues with minimum wage and how we want to retain our workforce. As entities in the private sector are paid more, we're going to lose more of our workforce to those jobs, which certainly concerns me. We're starting to see issues in our communities. We just had a big snowstorm down south on Long Island. Our town and county employees did a wonderful job, an amazing job cleaning up that storm, but the costs of overtime and the fees and taxes, payroll taxes that go along with that, just drive costs up. And I believe that as we provide more municipal aid, we are doing what is fair and doing what is right to solve some of these problems, especially when we speak to, and I'll quote right from Deputy Commissioner Mussolino's testimony, right on page 1 in paragraph 3. Now the governor wants to enact a $15 minimum wage for all New Yorkers, so we sense that will include municipal employees, and I appreciate getting that on record, so we are properly planning, not only in this budget, but in future budgets. And I believe most of us are in agreement that the storm and storm-related work is increasing, and we're seeing, as someone who is a victim of the hurricane, I certainly am a believer, and we'll need those municipal employees, and we'll need to retain that skilled workforce for the most needy and for those whose needs grow as these weather incidents become greater and more frequent. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
Thank you. Senator Marchione.